Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Kathy Moore, manager at the travel group, and joining us is Colleen Maxwell. Colleen's driving the webinar here, and many of you have probably talked to Colleen as she often answers the phone. This series of webinars is being recorded and available if you'd like to see them. And in respect of your time, we're going to answer any questions in a follow-up. If you'd like any further information or one of Quark's beautiful brochures, I must say, let us know and we'll get that to you. In 2020, Cindy Horton and the rest of the team at Infinity Travel Concepts joined us at the travel group, and we are extremely grateful to be working with them. Without further ado, here is Cindy Horton.
Thank you, Kathy, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to the second of our four-part series dedicated to expedition cruising. We've worked hard to set this up with our partners in order to really introduce you to what's become a burgeoning part of the cruising sector. And we know that whether you're looking for more luxury or a more immersive experience or new itineraries, new destinations, there really is something for everybody on these amazing small ships. Some of the cruise lines are booking into 2025 now, so we know that this is the time to learn about it and get excited about booking a new trip. So with that, I'd like to welcome Kara from Quark. Enjoy the evening.
Thank you so much for having me. It is such a delight to be here with all of you and to be here with the travel group. It's an absolute pleasure. I'm talking about some of my favorite places on the planet anyway. So let's dive into why travel with Quark Expeditions, because maybe you haven't even heard of Quark Expeditions before, which is great, because we have actually been around for 31 years and we have been delivering trips to the polar regions for so many decades. And this is all that we do. We are exclusively polar. We go to the Arctic and Antarctica. We don't go anywhere else in the world. So we don't dabble a little bit in these areas. We're specialists in these regions. We're actually the first company to take passengers to the North Pole back in 1991. And we were actually the first company to fully circumnavigate the Arctic Ocean with guests. And we were the first company to fully circumnavigate Antarctica with passengers. That's the 5th largest continent fully doing a full circumnavigation of Antarctica. So know when you're choosing us, with the travel group, you are really going with people who know these regions so intimately. With Quark Expeditions, we have a small little fleet of expedition ships, and they're all under 200 passengers. And so when you're choosing a ship in the polar regions, you're just choosing the size based on the experience that you're really wanting. So with Quark Expeditions having ships all under 200 passengers, we really do have a diverse fleet of polar expedition ships. And this enables everyone to get off the ship at the same time. As soon as you have ships that are 250, 300, 500 passengers, it actually does impact the experience in these regions. For instance, in Antarctica, there are certain areas that ships that are larger can't even actually get into to sail in. So that's just when you're choosing a ship, the right expedition ship that's for you, which is why the travel group is so important to help you choose exactly the type of experience that you're looking for. Because as Cindy said, there is a little something for everyone. But just a little sneak peek is something that I'd love to share with you. So let's delve into exploring Antarctica, the 5th largest continent, surrounded by the Southern Ocean. And so what's really exciting about traveling to Antarctica is the fact that you can go for as little as 8 days with Quark Expeditions or all the way up to 23 days. and everything in between, just depending on the length of the trip and the areas in which you want to explore. So I always want to ask a question. How do you want to get to Antarctica if you want to travel and explore the bottom of the world? Well, there's two ways of exploring this with Quark Expeditions. One is cruising the Drake Passage, the body of water there between South America and the tip of Antarctica. So that body of water is known as one of the roughest bodies of water in the world, the Drake Passage. And that's because there is a convergence of the seas coming together. And so I have crossed this a few times. And so we sail it. It takes about a day and a half to 2 days in each direction to sail, just depending on weather. The first time I did this, it was with my 66-year-old Aunt Lucy, and it was such a delight to be able to explore Antarctica with my aunt, who I love so dearly. And there was another option, though, is if you want to fly the Drake Passage. Some people want that badge of honor on their arm and say that they've cruised the Drake Passage for sure. But if you're short on time, but really want to go to Antarctica, we actually fly there as well. And look at that plane. It's even painted like a penguin. It's actually the only penguin that flies. And so there is a way of flying across the Drake Passage if you don't want to cruise the Drake Passage, if you're maybe get very seasick, or as I mentioned earlier, short on time. So there is no bad time to go to Antarctica when we explore. But because Quark Expeditions only goes to the polar regions, we're in these areas for quite a long time. We start at the end of October, beginning of November, all the way to the beginning of April. And we have 4 ships in this area. So we have a lot of different dates and itineraries to choose from. But it's just different things in different months that you'll see. Like I loved going in November when the ice was so pristine and the snow, the fresh fallen snow. And the adult penguins in Antarctica were stealing little stones from each other's nests because they were building their nests for their eggs and their chicks to hatch. So it was a really fun time to go. But then the end of December and early January is when the chicks start to hatch in the peak of the Antarctic summer. And then in March is a great whale season, seeing lots of orca whales and humpback whales, minkies possibly. So there is, again, no bad time to go. It's just what you want to see and what you want to do. So I highly recommend asking what months you'd like to go in. But when we get to Antarctica, there's a stillness and a silence that I will never forget. I have been traveling the world for a long period of time. My father's a retired captain with an airline. And for me, I've traveled to so many different places, but there was something so unique and so special about Antarctica. It was almost like I was in another planet, another world. It was just absolutely beautiful. But with Antarctica and going with Quark Expeditions, we get off the ship as much as possible. We're on these little ships to get off them and to get in the heart of these destinations as much as you'd like. We really aim for at least 2 excursions a day. So we have breakfast on board, then we'll go out for an excursion, and we'll actually be able to get out on land and step on the continent and walk around amongst the penguins. But then we'll come back and have lunch, and then we'll go for another excursion. And then we'll typically come back and have a briefing, a daily recap of what we've seen and what we might see the next day. And then we'll have dinner. There are times, though, where we'll have a third excursion, because on one of my expeditions with Quark, we were in the bar after dinner, having a little nightcap and hearing a bar talk from one of our amazing expedition team members. And the marine biologist interrupted and said, everyone, if you want a third excursion, grab your parkas, grab your boots, and come on down and get in the Zodiacs. So some people stayed in the bar, and that was fine. And some people, after a full day, they were exhausted. But then others were up for the adventure, were up for the expedition, and got into these little Zodiacs. And there were 40 crab-eater seals gathering krill at sunset. So really, when you're hearing expedition, you might be thinking, is it too out of the box? Is it not for me? But really what it means is we just have to expect the unexpected and pivot with weather and wildlife, and depending on what we're seeing. So with Quark Expeditions, it's not a traditional cruise line where you will maybe see a daily itinerary of at 10 o'clock we'll do this and 11 o'clock we'll do that. One morning you might see on your itinerary, you might wake up and it might say TBA because we don't know what's around the corner. And I'm so glad because one day we were supposed to go on a landing site, but we were in a cove and there was a mother humpback and her calf that were maneuvering around our Zodiacs. And it was such a remarkable experience. So even though we were supposed to be going on a landing, all the expedition guides really teamed up together and decided to see these magnificent, huge humpback whales. The penguins are definitely the stars of the show. If you're into wildlife, I know a lot of people go to Antarctica for it being their 7th continent, but the penguins are certainly the stars of the show. And even though we don't guarantee penguins in our brochure, I assure you, you will see plenty of penguins in Antarctica, no matter what time you choose to go. I mentioned whales before. I grew up on the west coast of British Columbia. I love whales. I used to see them also when I traveled to Hawaii with my family. But there was something so special knowing that so many whales migrate to this portion of the planet, miles and miles, to go to Antarctica to be able to fish in the Antarctic summers. So it was really magnificent seeing the humpback whales, but also orcas. I saw pods of 40 orcas. There were 5 species of orcas that actually live in Antarctica all year round, which I learned from one of our marine biologists on board. And what I love about our trips too is the fact that we have marine biologists, glaciologists, historians on board. We even have a penguinologist that travels with us to Antarctica that you can interact with. And so it's one expedition team member to 7 guests. And in some of our other little ships, it's even lower. So that means you're also not only getting an educational experience with them through lectures and them driving the Zodiacs, but they're also able to sit with you during dinners and lunches throughout the expedition, which I find just as much a part of the experience. I always say it's not only where we go, but it's who we're traveling with that really makes the difference. So with the Antarctic Peninsula, I just wanted to highlight a couple of voyages. I will not go through all of our trips, of course, but I just wanted to share with you, we do have 13-day trips where you cross the Drake Passage and even explore Cape Horn and Diego Ramirez, and 11 and 12-day trips as well. But then we have that 8-day Antarctic Express program where you can get to Antarctica in as little as 8 days. We fly from Punta Arenas, Chile, and we go over to King George Island. It's a little military base. It's a Chilean base that we land on. So again, it's that jet that you saw earlier. We're landing on a gravel runway, but then we're getting on the luxurious ship in Antarctica. And then we're having a full 4 to 5 days on the peninsula. And then we fly back on day 7 with another night hotel in Punta Arenas. So I wanted to mention that. And if you really want to go further and farther into Antarctica, we do have 14-day trips that cross right into the Antarctic Circle. But I can't talk about Antarctica without talking about these sub-Antarctic regions, the Falkland Islands in South Georgia. There's so much wildlife in these areas. In the Falkland Islands in South Georgia, if people have been to the Galapagos before, like maybe you've also been on an African safari, those types of experiences is what you'll expect in the Falklands in South Georgia. The South Georgia is actually known as the Serengeti of the Southern Ocean, or known as the Galapagos of the sub-Antarctic region. And so if you're into history, I highly recommend these areas, because the Falkland Islands, that bottom left picture is a gorgeous bay in the Falkland Islands, so gorgeous scenery. And South Georgia is home to Sir Ernest Shackleton's grave. And I found that the discovery of the Endeavour on the east portion of the peninsula, where Shackleton's ship was lost, and the discovery of it right now, it's been so much more popular to actually see Shackleton's grave now. So you might not want to miss that opportunity in South Georgia as well. But Falkland Islands is home to the world's largest black-browed albatross colony. So if you are a birder, definitely have Falkland Islands on your list. What's remarkable about the albatross is that their wingspan is over 7.5 feet on average. And so it's the largest wingspan of any living bird, but we can see them nest in the Falkland Islands. So they're generally out to sea for the majority of their lives, but they come back to land to nest. So it's a very rare opportunity to see this beautiful rare bird. And this bird was actually on the extinction list. And what I love about Quark Expeditions is how much we are actually partnering with so many organizations. One, which was the Save the Albatross Foundation, because they realized in Falkland Islands and South Georgia, they were realizing there was so much rat population, and rats were invading a very invasive species in these areas and depleting the populations of so much wildlife, the albatross being one of them. So I love the fact that we can now see that the black-browed albatross is really coming back, and their population is very much increasing. But in South Georgia, there is a penguin that you cannot see in Antarctica, but you can see in South Georgia, and that is the king penguin. So a lot of people see these birds, the second largest penguin species on the planet. There's 17 species. And this is pretty much exclusive to South Georgia. You will not be able to see one of these incredible birds in Antarctica. And if you can take a look really closely and see those brown ones, some of you may not know that those are the actual adolescent king penguins. So those are the juveniles that haven't molted their feathers yet. And it was known that naturalists actually thought that it was a completely different species of penguin, which I found really interesting. So lots to explore in the subantarctic region. So just to look at maps again, because I love having context of, again, where these islands are. So South Georgia is the subantarctic island. So it's more in the Atlantic Ocean, so the subantarctic region. And so it's beautiful and lush, but we have 16-day trips. So if you want to go to Antarctica and you're able to go for a little bit longer, definitely look at South Georgia and Antarctica if you're thinking of these trips. And then also we have a 20-day trip that includes Falkland Islands, South Georgia, and Antarctica, in addition to the whole kit and caboodle, or 23-day trip that not only goes to the Falklands and South Georgia, but crosses right into the Antarctic Circle at 66 degrees south. So if you are thinking, I'm going to Antarctica and I'm only going to go once, and I want to also cross the Antarctic Circle, there are options for you. But what I'm really excited to tell you as well is we have a brand new 14-day itinerary called Emperor Penguin Quest. And in 2004, Quark Expeditions made polar history when we conducted the first ever ground visit to the remote Emperor Penguin colony near Snow Hill. And so right now it's the most exclusive wildlife viewing experiences on the planet, definitely one of them. So Snow Hill is the legendary rookery, which has over 8,000 breeding pairs of emperor penguins. So a real remarkable experience. So I'm thrilled that we're doing this itinerary once again. We're doing it starting next year, next November, and we have 2 departures. So I was thrilled to actually share this with you today, because the movie March of the Penguins was actually one of the movies that inspired me to actually work in this tourism region, and actually work for Quark Expeditions when I saw that documentary back in 2006. So it's a remarkable, rare opportunity. We don't do this itinerary often, but we're doing it with our brand new ultramarine, which I'll share with you in a few moments. So now let's go to the top of the world, the Arctic. I wanted to share a little bit about this region with you, because unlike Antarctica, about 4 million people live north of the Arctic Circle. So if you're into community visits, highly recommend going to and exploring the Arctic. And so a lot of popular destinations are here, and we have trips again as little as 7 days though, all the way up to 17 days. So just depending on which area you're wanting to explore, there's so much to see and do, and so many regions in this beautiful part of our planet. So there is a season that we go, and it's opposite to Antarctica. So we're going in our Northern Hemisphere summer when we're exploring the Arctic. So the Arctic picks up where Antarctica leaves off. It's actually from the beginning of May, and it goes all the way through to the beginning of October. So it's just what you want to see and do. So it just depends on the area that you want to visit and the month that will do that. So I wanted to highlight Spitsbergen. Now, Spitsbergen is a remarkable island. It's an island off the coast of Norway, and it's in the Arctic Circle. And Spitsbergen is the main island of an archipelago of islands called Svalbard. So you may or may not have heard of Svalbard, and it's used sometimes interchangeably with Spitsbergen. So I just wanted to share with you another map that shows where these archipelago of islands is located in the heart of the Arctic Circle. It's very close proximity to the North Pole. But Longyearbyen, that you can see on the map there, is the most northerly town on the planet. And why a lot of people explore Spitsbergen is to see polar bears. It's known as the realm of the polar bear. And there's over 3,000 bears in these areas, and there's known to be more bears than people. So when I went to Spitsbergen in 2016, we were actually interrupted our lunch. The expedition team leader came on very gently, very quietly on the loudspeaker and said, and the inside of the ship, and said, everyone, please place your forks and knives down and gently and quietly come out on deck. and we witnessed a male bear out on the sea ice actually hunting a bearded seal. And it was a remarkable experience that took honestly, about 3 to 4 hours. I actually went back inside and grabbed a cup of tea and came back out. But it was a remarkable experience because the bear is actually hunting its prey. And I didn't know that it was stalking to be able to hunt the prey. So it was a remarkable experience. And then our polar bear specialist was walking around and quietly whispering into everyone's ear that this was a male bear, probably around 4 years old. So I loved having that little bit of knowledge of where this polar bear may have come from, what a bit of his story was. And it was a moment I'll never forget. And I don't have a very good camera. I'm not a photographer. So I sometimes take a couple of pictures and then allow myself to get some pictures from fellow passengers when I get back. But if you're a photographer, you'll absolutely love all of our trips, whether it's to the Arctic or Antarctica. We have a photography program on each departure. So we have at least one expedition team member that's a designated photographer to actually give tips and tricks, but also enhance the photography experience for fantastic photographers. But there's lots of other wildlife that can be seen, like walrus and birds. I'd never seen so many birds. I went to Kittiwake Canyon on the right here of this picture, and I had my mouth open so wide that the ornithologist told me to close my mouth because I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen so many birds. And he was like, you will get a surprise in your mouth if you keep your mouth open for any longer. And so I immediately closed it and sat down in silence and just experienced an amazing cliff with all these kittiwakes. And I didn't even know what a kittiwake was until I went to Spitsbergen. But now I even have my own binoculars here at home. I'm based in Toronto. So even when I go into my park, my local park, I take my binoculars and say, oh my gosh, what is that? Is that maybe a new woodpecker that I haven't discovered before? So you'll never know what you can really discover about yourselves when you're on an expedition. Also whales, like we saw beluga whales on my trip, and also reindeer. So lots to explore in Spitsbergen. We have 7-day trips to Spitsbergen, 10 days, like our introduction to Spitsbergen trip, which is great because if you want someone from the travel group to actually add on other parts of Europe, it's fantastic to team it up with maybe going to France or Sweden or Finland, or even explore Norway, coastal Norway. But then we have trips 12 and 14 days as well, where there's a real in-depth experience of the Spitsbergen Island. I want to move to Greenland. And I have to tell you that I love Greenland. It was never on my list, so I'm going to tell you a little secret. But this became on my radar. It's the largest island on the planet, home to the longest fjord systems in the world. East Greenland, Scoresby Sund Fjord, if you can take a look at the map, and on the right portion of the island there, the east portion, Scoresby Sund Fjord, and it is such a long and deep, gorgeous fjord. So we actually traveled to the west portion of Greenland, south and east. And so there's lots of cultural exchange programs. We go into community visits here, but there's beautiful ice formations as well. The scenery is gorgeous. And all of our trips can be as active or as leisure as you want them to be, whether you're traveling to the Arctic or Antarctica. And that's what I really love about Quark Expeditions, is we can really tailor make your experience. Even if you're traveling maybe with a family member or a small group, or you're even traveling by yourself, there's a little something for everyone. We can go for a Zodiac cruise or go with really long hikers, or there's great contemplative walking groups. But then there's also a lot of history in South Greenland. It's got a great Viking history. And I didn't even realize that there were mummified bodies in South Greenland, in the museum in South Greenland. I thought mummified bodies were left for Egyptian pharaohs, but it's quite remarkable that Greenland actually has mummified bodies as well to keep and preserve the bodies for their graves. And it's wonderful too that with our new ultramarine, we have 2 helicopters. So heli flight sightseeing is included in Greenland. It's wonderful to have that experience of cruising next to the glacier, but then getting the aerial view of the mountain ranges and the glacier itself. And so different opportunities for different types of adventures, like heli landings or heli hikings, or whatever you'd like to discover with the helicopters. I even like just the 15 to 20 minute helicopter flight sightseeing excursion. That's included just to get that different perspective. But again, we're going into a lot of communities in East Greenland and South Greenland and West Greenland. And I love the fact that we're also knowing that the communities We even have a tundra to table experience on board where 2 Greenlandic chefs come on board on select itineraries, and you can actually have an added experience of tasting local Greenlandic cuisine that these beautiful, incredible chefs make and storytell throughout the evening dining experience. So that is an additional cost for dinner. So it is a separate seating, but those are some of the incredible examples of the cultural exchange programs we have on our trips. We also have a Greenland Northern Lights voyage in September. We have a couple of departures that I love this itinerary because I love seeing wildlife throughout the day and going hiking. And then at night, we got woken up about 1 or 2 in the morning gently from the expedition team leader. We were able to get encouraged to go out on deck. And when I woke up the first night, I'd never seen the Northern Lights before, and I forgot I had my pajama bottoms on. And so I walked out there and I had my fleece pajama bottoms with my yellow parka that we give to everyone to keep on the voyage. And I looked up and I thought a few minutes later, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm in my pajamas. But that's what captures people is with the Greenland Northern Lights. It's just a remarkable, amazing experience in Greenland. And what I love about it as well is the fact that we're going at the end of the Northern Hemisphere summer and the beginning of their fall. So most people like to travel to Iceland and other areas of the Northwest Territories, for instance, to see the Northern Lights, which is fantastic. But going in some of those winter months, it really lessens the chance to see them. So I love the fact that when we're going in September, the chances of a lot of great weather throughout a longer voyage is very, very helpful. So we've been doing this itinerary for approximately 8 years, and there hasn't been a trip where we haven't seen the Greenland Northern Lights yet. So we go in July and October to Greenland. So we have 9-day trips to South Greenland, which I love this Greenland adventure itinerary. But then if you're a real cruiser, I love this 15-day essential Greenland itinerary. And we have trips all the way up to 17 days as well. But before I wrap up and show you some of the ships, I wanted to experience Canadian Arctic with you as well, where we can follow in the legendary footsteps of explorers and see other diverse wildlife, not only polar bears and belugas, but we also had a trip that came back and experienced narwhals this summer, which was remarkable. So the majestic narwhal is, mystical narwhal is up in the Canadian Arctic as well. So we are always on the lookout 24/7 for wildlife, and we will gently share with everyone on board when we do see wildlife at odd hours. But I also loved going into community visits in the Arctic and in Nunavut. So there's opportunities for, again, the cultural exchange programs. And I just wanted to mention that these areas are beautiful to explore. So maybe you've been to east part of Canada, the west portion of Canada, or explored so much of North America in and of itself, like you've been to Alaska. I highly recommend going to the heart of the Canadian Arctic because we go farther north than a lot of other operators. So not only is a 9-day trip available, but this is one of my favorites, the 12-day trip where we go so far north into Axel Heiberg and Ellesmere Island. And we do have the helicopters on this trip as well. Which brings me to our off-ship experience. So as much as I love our onboard experience, and it is a wonderful opportunity to have this home base of these little expedition ships that are anywhere between a luxurious ship and more of an expedition vessel, depending on what you're looking for in your home base. But we offer more off-ship adventures than any other operator in these regions. So a lot is included, like the polar plunge, that infamous polar plunge, diving into those cold waters. If you don't decide to do this on your trip, you'll have just as much fun, I can assure you, watching from the comfort of the vessel. We also offer various levels of hiking, like I was mentioning earlier, or walking, or even just being on a landing and sitting. I can remember sitting with my Aunt Lucy, and we just watched the penguins come in and out of the water, which was a remarkable experience. Zodiac cruising is included. Heli flight sightseeing on the ultramarine is included. But then there's additional paid adventure options that I just wanted you to be aware of. So if you are thinking of traveling to the polar regions with Quark Expeditions, please let the travel group know that you might be interested in sea kayaking, an actual sea kayaking program where we have a guide that specifically goes out with a small group of individuals in sea kayaks where we supply all of the equipment. Or maybe you want to stand up paddleboard in Antarctica, or maybe you want to camp in Greenland or camp in Antarctica. There's so many additional paid adventure options that you can choose from as well. Me personally, I get just as excited doing everything that's included and have just as much fun and feel just as exhausted at the end of the day. But if you're really looking for that added level of adventure or activities, we absolutely have that to offer. Our expedition team are one of the reasons why I've been with this company for 14 years. I love our expedition team wholeheartedly. They're incredible experts in their fields. I remember sitting one day at lunch with Michael Hambury, who is one of our glaciologists, and he's actually won 2 polar medals from the Queen of England for his work on glaciers in Greenland and Antarctica. One of his polar medals was actually given to him at Buckingham Palace, and he said the Queen was so lovely that she switched to Windsor Castle to be able to give him his second medal so that he wouldn't have to see one property twice for his medals. So it actually hearing these stories that just really enhanced the trip for myself, and I know that it enhanced the trip for others. So we also have an incredible experienced team. We also have an academy called the Quark Academy that we've created for that extra level of safety. So even if our guides have come with another company, we're training them rigorously through our actual program for driving Zodiacs and a level of safety standard. And I wanted to reiterate too that it is actually our expedition team that are ones driving the Zodiacs, going out on landing sites and driving the Zodiacs for Zodiac cruising. And so I just wanted to say that that really is a highlight of the experience as well. And all of this is on our fleet of little expedition ships. So I wanted to share the Ultramarine with you, this beautiful brand new ship in the fleet for Quark Expeditions, only 199 passengers, all outside cabins. And she's really an incredible, incredible ship. What's really important about her that I wanted to point out to you is she not only has 20 Zodiacs, but they're on water level Zodiac hangars, which is really important for getting off the ship and into the destination very quickly. So I also have this picture here so that you can see that there's 2 disembarkation points at the stern with the transom that flips down. But then there's also 2 Zodiac disembarkation points, one on starboard and one on port side. So there's no big long gangway when you're on this vessel, and you can really get in and out of the Zodiacs with ease. There's a great mud room, and those are our 2 helicopter landing pads that we have. I just want to show you a couple of cabins. They're all outside cabins. So that's our introductory Explorer suite, the balcony suites. We also have solo cabins on the Ultramarine and some of our other vessels. So I wanted to highlight that if you're a solo traveler, we have beautiful outside cabins for you as well. On the Ultramarine, we have a gorgeous spa and fitness center as well, and beautiful dining experiences. One thing that I really wanted to highlight though, especially with the ship, is we really uphold a polar promise. And so the Ultramarine features pioneering mix of sustainability features that I wanted to share just a couple with you, like power optimization. So we're actually efficient with energy and fuel usage. So we have eco-friendly lighting even, and we have streamlined design for basically the hull and propeller design ensures the lowest possible resistance going to these areas, because these are all polar class ships and polar built vessels that we have. We also have wastewater management feature, and I was really excited to share this with you because it's so clean that people can actually drink it. So varying standards exist for the collection and disposal of black and gray water, but wastewater discharge from the Ultramarine is actually treated to an almost drinkable condition, to a drinkable condition. So I just wanted to share with you the fact that even with that, and we also have a MAGS system on board that actually creates, it's a system that reduces waste on board up to 95%. So we create biochar from food scraps and maybe cardboard that's left on board from packaging, and we create biochar. So it reduces the waste on the ship by 95%. So I wanted to highlight just a couple of the sustainability features. And then our World Explorer is also, she's a hybrid. So she's a very sustainable vessel as well, only 176 passengers, a gorgeous, luxurious ship in the polar regions. So thank you so much for joining us today. It was such a pleasure to be here. And I wanted to let you know too that our polar promise, sustainability has really been in our DNA since the beginning, but we did come up with a polar promise for sustainability. We even have one of the pillars as our Polar Ambassador program, so that we're really creating polar ambassadors that are coming back into their own communities. So I know that when you go on a trip to Antarctica or the Arctic, you'll really come back. I know you'll come back with an incredible experience and almost change, because I know I did. So thank you so much for having me.
Kara, thank you very much for coming. We really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for joining us. If you have any questions, reach out to your agent or just call our office and we'll make sure you get anything you want. If you've added any questions, we'll get back to you and get that done too. Thanks everybody and good night.